G'day everyone, just having a bit of a pre-show here before we actually get started. Oh, actually, let me put my watch on silent and also my phone, otherwise it's going to keep annoying us. Yeah, I've got a few things to discuss with you today, but I'm going to give it a couple of minutes for everyone to come on board. So just say hi in the chat if you want to have a talk there. And just say hi so I know you're here. I'm just going to put hi in as well. And so I know who's sort of come on board there. We're going to have a chat about a whole stack of different things today. Most of it is Sony related, as this is obviously the Sony live chat. I've got a couple of things extra to talk in there, which I thought you might find interesting. But I'll just leave it until a few more pop in. So we'll give it about a minute, and then we'll actually start, because it's only 12:59, so I was actually going to start around about 1 o'clock here, which is just about ticked over, so I might give it a minute. So if you can, guys, please give me a thumbs up. Let's see if we can get some more people on board. Stuart's here. G'day, Stuart. How you going? Nice to see you here for the live chat. It's always nice when people say hello. I love that aspect of it. And let me know too where you're from, guys, as well, because I do always love to see where you're from as well. Probably we're going to be a while again. These chats always tend to go a fair while. I can't seem to stop answering questions, which I suppose is a good thing in a way. Vic's here as well. Hi Vic, how are you? Good to see you here. David's here as well. Good to see you here, David. Richard's also here. Good night. See, it's obviously evening for most of you guys over in the US, and it's very late, I think, in the UK or Europe. I've got a couple of things talking about pro Sony support for the people from Europe as well, so that's going to be an interesting thing as well that we can go through too. I've also got some news about my Sony A9 that was in for repair, so I'll discuss that with you as well once we actually get started on this. Like I said, I think I'll give it just a minute or so to get everyone over. If you are watching later on, just skip to the blank logo, and that's where we'll actually start for the day, so you can skip to that if you don't want to see any of the pre-show at all. These are 68 is also here from Georgia. Hi, how are you? Vic's here from Canada. Keith is here as well. Carl Ryan's here. And Richard Oliver's here as well. Olivier, I think it's pronounced, from Trinidad and Tobago. So we've got people from all over the place, which is so good. It's amazing to have this massive family that we're starting to build now. So I really do appreciate you guys coming on live now. And as my site's starting to grow, we're getting more and more involved in the discussion, which is the best part about that. As well. So yeah, we'll just see how we go. David Johnson's here as well. I mentioned that before. So guys, do keep chatting amongst yourselves while I'm going through the news and stuff, and I will come back to this, like I said, each time. So I'll bring that up at the end and go through all the questions and answer those for you as well. But feel free, obviously, to keep going through the chat as well at the same time. And that way you can sort of talk amongst yourselves and then obviously ask questions. Just to make sure I don't miss your question, put the at David Osler, might be the easiest thing. Then it highlights me and I'll know what questions you all want answered. That way I won't miss one because it highlights it a little bit. David Johnson said, not much, just relaxing after a long day of work. So that's good to see, David. Grab a beer with me, mate. I'm going to be doing that now. So, all right, well, let's click over to the logo where people can switch to if they're coming in a little bit later, and we'll go from there. So just hang on a second, guys, and we'll start the show. G'day everyone, and welcome to Beer O'Clock. I've officially started calling the time Beer O'Clock now. You guys have been an incredibly bad influence on me. I didn't do this when I was first starting up. But now that it's getting closer, well, it's basically nearly 30 degrees today. It's beautiful outside, 30 degrees Celsius that is, not Fahrenheit. I thought, you know, I'm going to start having a drink with you guys, because I know most of my people that are actually watching me come from the US and Europe and places like that. Here in Australia, I don't get as many watching now because it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, so most people are actually at work. So I'm just having a drink with you guys. My wife is going to crack it if she watches this. But, well, this is the advantage of being your own boss. I'll just have to tell myself off a little bit later and say, David, you're just not doing the right thing. You need to calm down a little bit, cut down on the alcohol. So cheers, guys. Like I said, I'm sticking to the Coronas at the moment because I've got a whole case of them. How come that doesn't focus? Oh, there we go. Yeah, so I'm sticking. Got the Coronas. You can see Susie's back. She's appeared back there. So good to see you here again, Susie. So hey, hi, say hi to Susie, everyone. Hang on. Cheers, everyone. Oh my God, that's good. Love it. So, we've got a few things that I want to talk to you today about. Most of, like I said, I was just talking in the pre-show, most of it is actually Sony related, so a lot of it is related to that. But there's a couple of things I wanted to discuss with you too that I found that you might find interesting as well, that aren't so Sony related. Just out of curiosity, I thought it might be interesting to have a look at. Apart from that, like I said, ask any questions you've got down in the live chat description box there. And I'll come back to that at the end and answer all those questions. If you can, put at David Osler might be the easiest thing because then my name's highlighted and it's easy to see what's directed at me, rather than just having a chat amongst yourselves, which could be a thing as well. I'm starting wedding season full on from this Sunday. I've got a wedding shoot that's in a castle that I'm doing here, which is going to be really interesting. I might even try and do some smoke bombs and things. I can't wait. It's going to be really interesting. And they've got a theme, I think, where they're sort of going to be a bit medieval, which is going to be really cool. And the bride really fits in. I can't talk about that too much yet because I don't want to give too much away. But the bride's really going to fit in with this theme, and also the groom is too. So hopefully I'll be able to have some images from that I can show you. It might be a bit of fun. Then it goes into real high season for me for the next 3 or 4 months, which goes a bit nuts. November for me particularly is absolutely crazy with weddings. I'm nuts in November, so things will probably, I'll be very busy over the next few weeks, particularly before Christmas, which is a good thing, I suppose. It's seasonal like it is for you guys in the States and Europe, I suppose. I don't get many weddings in winter. It quietens right off, but then obviously now, November, December, it gets really busy, and then it really picks up again sort of around February, March. But the interesting thing for me as a wedding photographer, it's now moved to be my busiest time is actually November, which is interesting, which I suppose is the end of spring, which would be what, the same for you guys in the US of around about, what would it be, May. So let me know too, is that your peak season in the US? Because I'd be curious to know, when is your peak season? Is it like here in Australia, which is that month before the summer, or is it more in the summer, the middle of summer? So let me know, because I'd be curious to know how it is with you guys as well. But let's get over to some news anyway. I'll just have another beer. Crack one with me too. I'd love you to have a drink with me, guys. I wish I could see you. I might do a podcast with someone one day and we can have a drink together. So let's go to latest news. So I'm going to scroll over to here because now this isn't Sony related, but I just thought it's interesting to actually have a look at, because this GoPro apparently this was put in lava. Now it's incredible. I don't know what's happened, whether he's dropped it or whatever, but he's dropped it into the lava, and you can see the actual molten rock lava around it. And the interesting thing is, it still worked after this. That's incredible when you think about it, that it actually still did work, even though that heat was there. Obviously, that clear plastic casing has shielded it. But wow, to think that you could drop something like that into lava like that and then it still would work the next day is just crazy. And he actually got footage on that, and you can see that if you look at that article through Petapixel. If only cameras were built the same way. So that's really interesting. I had a laugh when I looked at that this morning. I thought that was quite interesting. The next article that I wanted to talk to you about is that you can now pre-order the new Sigma 16mm f1.4 E-mount lens at B&H Photo, and it's $449. So this gives you roughly around about that 24mm equivalent on your Sony cameras. So if you do like shooting at that 24mm focal length, this may be a great lens for you, and it's also reasonably cheap as well, in only being $449. So it's a reasonably cheap lens, and it's got a nice wide aperture of 1.4. It also goes up to f16 as well, so it seems like it's quite a good lens. I know Hannah Saber, I think, has done a review on this, I think, or was it Jason? I can't remember this. Jason Vong may have done a review on this lens as well. It's not really for me because I'm not a big fan of the 24mm focal length on my full frame cameras or even the Sony cameras. I prefer the 35mm focal length. But again, that's for me personally. That's why I love, and you know, the ones that have been watching me all this time, that my favourite lens on the Sony a6500 is the 24 1.8. Which gives you that 35mm focal length, and that is my favourite lens that I've got, really, with the 35 1.4 full frame Sony lens that I use on my full frame cameras. I love that 35 focal length. It seems to be there's a bit. Some people say the 50mm is the perfect focal length. Some also say the 35mm is the perfect focal length for things like street photography and those sort of things. I find 35 is my favourite focal length. It's also the lens that I use most on my weddings. It's the lens that I will always be using when the bride's getting changed. A lot of the details are shot with the 35. I even love it for portraits when I want a bit of environmental type images coming in. I used it the other day in that dance shoot that you saw that I did. That was all done with a 35mm focal length. So for me, this lens might interest some that like a little bit wider, but for me personally, I don't. If I was going to get a wide lens, I'd want to go wider than that. I don't think I'd be buying the 24mm lens. I'd be more going for a 35 and then going down to a 12mm, something like that, around that area. So yeah, but it's an interesting thing anyway. But you can now pre-order it if you want to, and it is a really good price, $449. Again, I'm not sure how quiet these lenses will be, because sometimes these other third-party lenses can be a little bit noisy if you're in video, and that can be an issue if they're a little bit noisy focusing. So you've got to be careful on that, and I'd be checking a review of that to make sure that it is really silent, because if you have got it on something like an a6500 and you're doing video, you do want it to be really nice and quiet. So that's a thing to think about as well. G'day, Michael. Good to see you here. Jim Penn's also here. Minus 15, Jim. Have a beer, Jim. That's nuts. Oh, my God. It's nearly 30 here today, Jim. Oh, I don't think... Susie's here. Yep, she's here, guys. So Susie's back. I'm going to come back to the questions a little bit later, guys. So that's an interesting lens anyway. So you can now pre-order that. I'm not sure if it's saying when delivery... Oh, it's saying shipment is to start November the 22nd. So it's basically fairly soon. Oh, thank you so much, Michael. Really appreciate that donation. Have you heard, Michael, when you're going to get your a7RII yet? Have you got dates on when that's going to be delivered? I'd just be curious if you can answer that in the live post, because I've got some... thing here to say that in China at the moment, the first a7RIIIs and 24 to 105mm lens have shipped, but that's to Chinese buyers, so it's gone there first, which is interesting. They're not saying yet when it's going to be in the USA or the EU, but it's definitely being shipped now in China, so I would think that it's only a matter of time now before it's actually shipped. Oh, thank you so much, Dave. Cheers for you too, mate. They're not saying yet when it's going to be shipped in the US and China and EU. So let me know if you've heard anything about yours, Michael, because I'd just be curious. I know they were saying, I think they were saying middle of November, weren't they? Or the end of November for US orders. So I'd be curious to know if you've heard anything about that. The 24-105 is a lens that actually interests me. I'm not sure if I'll buy it, but it does interest me. Now, as you know that have been following... Oh, Michael's just said the end of this month. Wow, that's still a fair while, isn't it? It's interesting how China's got that so early, shipping. The interesting thing is that 24-105 is an amazing focal length. It's basically the same focal length that I love on my a6500, which is the 18 to 105. focal length. I adore that lens on the a6-500, especially for travel. Like when I went to New Zealand, that was basically the only lens that I used, and I used the 24 1.8, which is on this camera now. I used the 24 1.8 if there was anything that I needed in low light, and I find that's a fantastic focal length for travel. It covers a nice wide angle, and it also gives you quite a decent zoom. And if you're doing video and you use clear image zoom, well, you're getting up near 200 millimeters. So it's an incredible focal length if you want to sort of cover everything. So it does interest me perhaps to buy that for a video lens. And also for travel, and I think one day I might buy it just for that. So that lens does really interest me. So let me know too in the chat, guys, whether you think that's going to be an interesting lens to have, whether you think you'd like to buy that lens or not. And especially if you say you like the 18-105 on the a6-500, which I adore. I think that's a fantastic lens. Yes, it's only f4, but I haven't got an issue with using that lens. I don't need anything faster for what that gives me. Plus, remember, if you go anything faster than that, it then starts to be really heavy glass, and that's not a real good travel lens. Whereas I think this would be a really good travel lens to take. I believe it weighs about the same as the 24-70 2.8, because it is quite a long focal length. But again, you're getting that massive focal length coverage that you can use for travel and landscapes and things like that. So I think it'd be a great all-around lens. So let me know what you think about that, and I'll come back to the questions on that. Also, there's now a help guide for the a7RII that you can download, and I'll put all of these links in the description box down below, so you can have a look down there. So I will put them all down below, so you can check that out. But you can now download that whole help guide, and it's available for download. And you could read that if you are waiting for the a7RII to come through. I usually did pre-download them and have a read through them anyway. I am one of those geeks that reads through the whole manual. I don't know why, but I actually enjoy going through camera manuals and looking at all the features. And you do sometimes find things that you know, do help you that you might have missed otherwise. So this is quite good. And being electronic, you'll be able to search and things like that. It does come in all the different languages, which is good as well. But it is now available to download. Another thing as well, which is good if you're thinking about purchasing the a7RII, is that this site will let you get current prices for your camera gear, and you can sort of see that they're showing what's trending at the moment. They're saying a7RII is trending at 1968 at the moment. So there's lots of cameras that you could actually go. So for instance, if you wanted to trade in the a7RII, just let's put it in. R2, I mean. And then you can click on that, and then it'll give you a breakdown of what that camera is. If you look down here, it'll say what the megapixels is, ISO range, maximum continuous shooting, some more little detail about that. It'll then give you what the average used price is, which is 1968, and the trusted seller, I suppose, on eBay or whatever, would be 2137, and starting from new is 2398. And rental, it's saying you can get that from 107 a day. Let's go back. Let's try Sony a6-500. Let me know, guys, whether you think these are fair prices too, because I'd be curious to know what you think about the pricing that they're sort of showing on here. So they're saying used is 1,186. I suppose this is US dollars. 1,222 for a trusted seller. New is starting from 1,398, and you can rent it from $61 for 3 days. So it's interesting to sort of look at this and to see what is available out there. You know, and well, let's try a lens, because I'm going to try the 70-200. Let's see what the Sony 70-200 is. There wouldn't be many available though. Let's just see, because I'm curious. There'd be very few of these up for sale, I wouldn't think. Oh, that's A mount. Let me go back. I don't think it's... oh, hang on. I don't think it's even there. Oh, there we go. 2,281 individual, 2,246, 2,598. So you're not saving much at all, I suppose. And that's the thing with the Sony lenses. They do really hold their value, which is an interesting thing to look at going through this. So anyway, it's an interesting thing if you're thinking about selling a bit of gear and you're wondering about what price you could start at for selling it. I think this is pretty close to what you got, Michael, isn't it? G'day, Ben. How you going? The interesting thing with this is if you are thinking about upgrading and you're not sure exactly where to start from, or is there a figure where you can sort of put in to say, well, this is an average. Well, this site is giving you about the average of what it's going for. So yeah, so I'll stick that in the link below and you can have a look and try that and just see what's available. So anyway, great site. Let me just bring that back so I'll copy the link for you all later. Yesterday, if you looked at my talk that I did, I gave a talk on the new Panasonic, the G9. It's interesting how they've called it G9 and the A9, isn't it? But I noticed Sony Alpha Rumours have called it the Mini A9, which is interesting. But I'm not going to go on about that now because I discussed that yesterday. So if you wanted to check what I thought about that camera, have a look at yesterday's live show because I don't want to concentrate too much on this. This is more Sony today, but have a look at that if you wanted to sort of think what I think about that. And I've had some great comments in the comments box down below where people have been talking about that. It's great. When they say Mini A9, it is really only a Mini A9. It doesn't come anywhere near what my A9 will give me. But for the money, I suppose it's not bad, but still won't beat my Sony A9, which is the best camera I've ever had. This is a really interesting thing, and again, all these people talking about Sony have no lenses. This is only an SR2 rumour. But Sony is working on a new 200 to 600 millimeter E-mount lens. They're not saying when this will be released as yet, I don't think. And they're not even saying what. I'd say this would be a 5.6 or something. I couldn't picture it being, or it may be an f4. I couldn't picture it being anything faster than that. I'd say it's going to be a variable aperture, being a zoom lens like it is. No, it doesn't say yet. Also down the bottom, which is interesting, it's saying one more thing. The same source said within the same email that the a7RII launch will be delayed till early 2018, which I think is probably what's going to happen. G'day, Tony. Good to see you here, mate. So I do think that that's probably what's going to happen with the a7RII. I don't think, now that Sony... Cheers, everyone, by the way. Now that Sony have released the a7RII, and they've also released the A9 not long ago, I've got a feeling the next camera that may come out possibly will be the upgrade to the a6500. I've got a feeling that might be the next one that comes out. I had a thought, I was thinking yesterday about this because we had that big discussion about the new Panasonic G9 and the way that can do 4K 60p. Well, I just wish, and this, let's put this out to Sony, and you never know, they may watch this. I really hope that Sony give us the ability with something like the a6500 to do 4K 60p. Now, I don't care if they only give me that and it only works for 5 minutes. Now, it'll be interesting to see what you guys think about this as well, but I don't need a camera that will do 4K 60p for long periods of time. Because, for instance, there's no reason why I would shoot, say, a whole wedding ceremony with 4K 60p. It's not needed at that because I'm not going to slow that video down. It's just going to be shot basically at one time and then I'll grab snippets out of it and I don't need anything slowed down. If I'm dealing with 4K 60p, most of the shots that I do, if you look at my wedding images, the wedding videos I do, most of the wedding images that I do, I'm only shooting for 10 to 15 seconds max. So if Sony have an issue with overheating on the a6500, that's fine. Give us the option to run 4K 60p on the a6-7000, whatever you want to call it. Give us that option to do 4K 60p and make it a very small time limit. I don't have an issue with that at all because I would be happy to still then shoot most of it at 4K 24p, but then have the ability to go to 4K 60p for a 10 to 15 second shot. Now, that's probably the issue at the moment. They're probably worried about overheating, but they probably could do it if they had a very small period of time where it would allow for that, and they say cut it off after 5 minutes or something like that. At least Sony have a look at that aspect of it, and I'm hoping they are, but I really do want that aspect of it. And, you know, let me know if you think that too would be something that you'd be interested in, or would you, do you think then Sony, you'd be going crooked Sony for limiting that time limit for 5 to 10 minutes? Would that be something where you'd then be slamming Sony for not releasing it with a longer time limit? I know that's the issue with, you hear this all the time with Canon and Nikon shooters. All they ever say is, the Sony overheating. Let's be frank about this. You don't need cameras to really stay on for that long periods all the time. Like I said, I haven't had issues with my Sony cameras overheating, to be honest. I may have been lucky, but I haven't had issues with that. But I don't ever leave my camera going for a long, long time in these high resolutions, because I don't need to. If I'm just shooting, like I said, the ceremony, I may do 4K, but it would only be 4K 24p. And that's ample. But to have the ability to shoot these short clips in 4K 60p with the bride walking or something like that, you know, for 5 to 15 seconds is all I need. So Sony, please, if you're listening to this, please give us that ability in the a7RII or whatever that's going to be. And then clearly with the a7S3 or the A9S, that will give you the ability to shoot the longer periods of 4K 60p, and I'd be very happy with that. I'd be jumping up and down. But let me know if you think that's a worthwhile thing too, guys, because I'd be curious to know if you think that that's something that you would be interested in as well, or whether you'd be slamming Sony for giving us that feature. So yeah, let me know. What else have we got? Oh, now this is great too. Once again, the Canon and Nikon shooters who slam Sony for not having support, they are upping the support the whole time. They've just added a stack of European destinations as well now. So basically they're covering they're starting to cover most countries. They're now going to, I think, to France, Italy, Belgium, scheduled for April. They're also... I think Denmark, Sweden, Finland and Norway will be able to apply for membership to make use of pro support services. So clearly it's everywhere now. Now, while we're on this, I wanted to talk about my Sony camera. Oh, I should come back here actually. I'll just show you this. This is the Sony Grows Imaging Pro Support program in Europe. So again, this document will be down below, so you can see that if you want to actually read this document. It's currently is available in Japan, South Korea, Hong Kong, Taiwan, India, China, Russia, Canada, Germany, Switzerland, Austria, Netherlands, the United Kingdom, Australia, Mexico, and the United States. And like I said, they're going to add Denmark, Sweden, Finland, Norway, and also France, Italy, Belgium. So they are covering now a lot of countries. So, and like I said, I have been amazed at how well that system works. And for the people that were following me, I've had an issue with my Sony camera. I did report it that morning, and by half an hour later I got an email to say all the details who I have to contact. They then had the courier there with me within a couple of hours, picked the camera up. The next day I heard from Sony that they'd got the camera, and a day later I actually got the information to basically say that they were giving me a loan camera until they fix this, because it was going to be a while before they could fix it. Now, I heard from them yesterday that they now believe it's the card. They've sent the card off to Sony in Japan for further testing. And I did think that was possibly what was wrong with it, because remember, I did show you what was wrong with the camera, and it was getting those lines coming through the image. But it was coming in only at a point of about 1,000 images, and when after 1,000 images, it then started to occur. So it seemed to be that it happens at a certain spot, and that makes sense to me that it possibly is the card. So they said that they're sending that off to Sony. I'll get a replacement. If it's faulty, they'll send me a replacement card, because it is the latest Sony card. It's the fastest one that they have. I can't remember the actual model. But guys, like I said, I've been a professional photographer for, I can't remember how long. I've never had service like this before. I've never had Nikon when I had issues. I had the D610, which had that oil splatter. I had to drive into Melbourne, which is an hour away. I had to drop the camera off. They didn't offer me a loan replacement at that time. I had to leave it for a couple of weeks to get it fixed, and then got it back. There was nothing like what Sony's given me. So when you hear people talk about the Sony Pro support is no good, honestly, if the other countries are the same as what they are here in Australia, and I don't know, perhaps they're not, but I can only talk about how they are here in Australia, and honestly, it's amazing. I'm just so happy with how they work. They've sent me an A9. I can keep that until my camera and everything is all fixed. I can just call a courier. They'll come and pick it up again to send it back. I mean, what an amazing service. Anyway, that's available now, or it will be soon in other countries, so you'll have it in a lot more countries soon. I wanted to talk about this as well because I noticed Danny brought this, he had a talk about this on his channel, that One Camera Guy, talking about the Sony PlayMemories app. And I honestly, I hate the fact that Sony have taken this out, and I don't really understand why they have taken this out, because even though I suppose you're saying a professional photographer won't use these, well, I'm a professional photographer and I do use them. Particularly, I love this app that they're showing here on the screen, which is your Sky Memories. Now, I'll tell you which ones I actually use, because I'd hate to lose them. I don't know whether we can... No, I won't. I'll just do it this way. So, I'm basically using... Now, there's a couple that I like to use. Obviously, the PlayMemories app come in... I'm not going to get that because it's going to... blur. The PlayMemories app come in like that. Now, I'll tell you a couple which I can't do without, and I'm using that right now, which is the PlayMemories Open Memories tweak, which gives me the ability to run this camera for as long as I want. Now, without that, it's going to shut off at 30 minutes. So I couldn't do this live chat without it switching off halfway through. So that's a really big thing for me, and that's probably a reason why I won't sell my a6500 or this camera, because I want to keep that PlayMemories Open Memories tweak. The other good thing it does too is sometimes I change from PAL to the American system. I can't remember what you use in the United States. I sometimes change to that to get more options in the video formats. And the interesting thing is, every time you turn your camera on, you get a warning with that, and it's really annoying. You get that every single time you turn it on. Well, this Open Memories tweak gets rid of that as well. So that's a great feature for me, and it's one that I really don't want to have to do without. So, you know, that's one thing. Now, there's a couple of other things that I've used in this all the time. Sky HDR is lovely, and it's really good if you want to get blending exposures, which is giving you... it's giving you this result, which does multiple exposures and blends it into one image for you. Just saves you time later on, and it is something that I actually use, and I actually really like it. The other thing too is, another thing that I love using in here as well is the touchless shutter I've used before, but not much now. The main thing I like to use is smooth reflection. Now, have any of you guys tried that smooth reflection? In a pinch, it does give you a really good result to smooth out water, like what you get with an ND filter. And it actually works really well. And it's something that I really like using when I'm on travel and things, if I can't be bothered to get an ND filter out. So that's another really good thing as well. So have a look at that too. That's a great app. If you've got the a7RII or the a6500, have a look at that too. The smooth reflection is a great app. Star Trails is fun as well if you want to play around with that. The other really good app that I use a lot is the time-lapse feature. And I've had no issues using these. I've used that extensively in New Zealand when I was capturing images on time-lapse. And again, it's a great feature. That's all gone now in the new cameras. So please, Sony, if you are listening to this as well, give us this back. There shouldn't be any reason why you've taken this out. I don't understand that really, to be honest. Give us that back as a firmware in the A9 and the a7RII. And let me know too whether you agree with that, guys, because I'd be interested to know whether you think that's a worthwhile thing. But I really don't want to, you know, let that go. But yeah, so I thought that's a bit of a rant, but I agree with Danny what he's saying, and it is a shame that they've actually got rid of that, and you can watch the actual video there if you want to go and see his channel. But yeah, I don't really understand why they've taken it out. Let's have a look. So, now the last thing I'm going to do, and then we'll go up to questions, is this. And I just brought this in because talking about that Sky app. This is a good guide for using what filters you use for landscape photography. And again, I'll leave this in the description down below so you can have a look at this. And it sort of takes you through the whole thing of which filters you would use for a certain thing. And it's just interesting reading. So I thought that I'd put that in there as well for you. But I've had surprising results from that Smooth Reflections app. You should try it. It actually does give you a really good result. I've been actually amazed, especially for travel. So that brings us to the end of that. But let's go to questions, because I'm going to bring this up and we'll go through some questions, guys. So fire away any questions that you've got, and we'll go through them all. Let me clear this. Dave said, gas man. I'm probably got gas too because I'm drinking this beer. I'll be burping all day now. Most people are just saying hi. What else have we got? Keith saying hi to Susie behind me. Vic is saying the FE90 is extremely sharp, just slow autofocusing. Yeah, and I tested it as well. It's probably one of Sony's sharpest lenses. It is incredibly sharp, but it is a bit slower. It did improve on the A9 as against, say, the a7RII, but it was still quite a slow focusing lens compared to the other lenses. The other thing too is it's quite big. I love that. I use the APS-C one, the 35 macro, which for me is perfect for the type of macro work that I do, which is wedding rings, things like that. So that's great. And I love the size of that, and it's easy to manage. Clearly, if you're shooting bugs and stuff like that, it's no good. But you could also use that for portraits, but I've already got the Batis 85, so I don't need the 90 for that aspect. Jim Penn saying it's -15 to -10. Oh, that's so cold. Carl said image resource has comparison images from the D850 and the a7R2 on the compararometer. Check it out. Oh, that's interesting. I think they'd be pretty close, Carl. Is that what happened? Let us know, but I think they would be fairly close. I know, I think the Northrops did one, and he said the noise was a fraction better on the D850, but only because you could shoot at ISO 64. Apart from that, the a7R2 actually was better as soon as you started to raise the ISO. So they're probably line ball, but it's the other things about that camera, the a7R3, which is much better than the D850 now. You know, I mean, the focusing, maybe on par, but remember, you haven't got the EVF, you haven't got the stabilization, you haven't got the video features. So it's just not all about the actual image comparison. It's also about the other features that you can get as well. I think they'd be pretty comparable, though, in their images that you get. If it's anything like the a7R2, and they've probably improved it a little bit, it's an amazing sensor. 2 donations there. Thanks so much, guys. Really appreciate that. Michael's saying he gets his a7R3 at the end of the month. Well, it may be earlier now, Michael, if they're shipping them in China, perhaps. David said November the 30th is the release dates here in the States. So hopefully you guys will get it a bit earlier now that China has said that they're shipping in China. What else have we got? Zeiss 16-70 f4 is an APS-C version of the 24-105. Yeah, it is roughly, I suppose. Yeah, because the 18-105 is a longer focal length, isn't it? That's true. David Johnson said not much. He's talking to each other. What else? Oh, Michael said, yes, SmallHD just came out with a nice update for all their monitors. I did update their SmallHD focus this morning. I did notice immediately it's much sharper, especially if you're punching in and getting focus. It does seem to be much sharper, and it has some other great features as well, Michael, which is you can actually now check your highlight in your exposure, things like that, which are much better. So you can check skin tones, things like that. I love that HD monitor. It's one of the best things that I've purchased. It's so good. But yeah, they released version 3 this morning with a stack of updates. I've only just really put it on and had a quick look, but it seems to be that it's a really nice update so far. Delta Dave said the a7R3 might make the might be the Go E-mount until Sony releases the A99 III. Could be, yes, you might be right, Dave. I think the a7RII is just going to be an amazing camera, and I may get that sometime next year. I'm still waiting to see what they release next, to see which way I go, Dave. I'm not sure yet. Ben said, does the site do lenses? No, it does lenses too, Ben. So it will do lenses. It does everything. I think it might even do flashes. I'm not sure. Diana said, all right, David, I caught your stream live. Good to see you after hanging out on that one camera guy's stream this week. Oh, yeah, I saw you there, Diana. Yeah, we had a little chat there. I remember that. Ben Ashford said, right, yeah, so he's worked out that as well. Take the Shooter said November the 30th for the a7RII. So he's saying he's getting it at the 30th of November as well. It would be American prices, Ben. Yes, it wouldn't be Australian, those prices. They would be American. Tony's just saying hi. What else have we got? No selling it. We'll use it for B-roll. Oh, is that Take the Shooter? You're talking about the a7R2 there when you're saying I won't sell it. I'll be using it for B-roll when I want to use PlayMemories apps like time-lapse. And like I said, that's probably one reason why I won't sell my a7R2 and also the a6500, because I need those PlayMemories apps. They're really handy, especially that PlayMemories hack. That's a really important thing to me, to be able to leave the camera unattended and let it keep running. I'm just hoping Sony change their mind and bring that back. I don't really understand the reasoning for taking that out, to be honest. Let me know if you guys can think of a reason why. Delta Dave said, do you think the a7S III will have hot swap SD cards? Well, I'm hoping so, Dave. They have to answer that GH5, so I've got a feeling it probably will. The GH5 is incredible, and the new Panasonic's the same. You can hop swap the cards when they're full. So when the card is full, it will switch to the next camera. You see the light, which one's recording. You can then pull the card out. You could format it, download the images, format it, put the card back in or replace it with another card, and it keeps going seamlessly. So it will shoot basically until it runs out of battery. If you have it on external power, it won't stop shooting at all. You can just keep replacing the cards. So I think that the Sony will have to have that, and I'd be surprised if they don't have that feature, Dave. I would be really surprised. What else have we got here? Take the Shooter said, Michael Mostro, I will also keep the a7R2 for videos longer than 30 minutes since it's hacked. So we'll be keeping it to get my a7R3. Now, I know, Michael, did you have two a7R2s, or did you only have one? I'm just curious. Let me know, because if you did have two, are you keeping one, or did you only have one and you've sold just that one? But like I said, that's a reason enough for me not to get rid of those cameras at this stage. They almost become classics because you've got that ability to be able to do that. So yeah, now I suppose the only thing we have to watch is that Sony don't do some firmware update that takes that out. That's going to be an interesting thing. So if they do release new firmware for those cameras, it might be better off to hold off for a while until you hear whether the PlayMemories hack still works, because that could be a possibility. So be careful if you're running those cameras about running updates of firmware, because it might be locked out. So just be careful with that, guys. So what I'm saying is, don't do the update immediately. Ask some friends that have updated or whatever whether it still works. What else have we got here? Tag the Shooter said, my a7R2 was my favourite and biggest money maker for me. I can't get rid of her. I know you sort of do get attached to them. It's funny, isn't it? Don Chillin said 4K, 120 frames per second for 5 minutes. I would love that. Yeah, and right, yeah, imagine that. But I don't think we're going to get 120 frames, not in the a700, but we might get 60. If Sony are really nice to us, we may get that for a short period of time. And like I said, I'd be happy to have 4K 60p for 5 minutes. I still would be happy to have it for that time. I know a lot of people might whinge and carry on about it, but I think that's ample for what most shooters will shoot. What else? Tag the Shooter said, but it's so hard to use her alongside my A9 now. I must admit, I do have issues now going back to the a7R2 because the focus and just the ergonomics and the way that camera feels is insane. It is very hard to go back. to using the a7R2, even just for the eye focus, you know, and using it silent shutter. It is hard to go back to the a7R2 for shooting, I have to admit that. But like I said, the way that I'm shooting now, most of my weddings, for instance, on Sunday's wedding, I'll use the A9 for probably 80 to 90% of the wedding. Then I'll use my a7R2 for that other 10% where I want that high resolution, the dynamic range, and maybe some flash work that I'm doing. I might use that, but it'll only be used in small amounts. But I still wouldn't get rid of it. Also, it's going to be a great B cam for video when I, you know, and I am using all the Sonys still for video, even though I've got the GH5. What else have we got here? Diana said, even though cell phones don't have the recording limit, if you think about it, most probably don't record that long in 4K or higher frame rates, even if they use their video a lot. And I have to tell you, Diana, that's a really good point, because I did a wedding last year in Echuca and it was incredibly hot. And I was using, and to be honest, the video actually out of these cameras is pretty amazing. It is really decent in good light. The issue for me was I had my A9, I had the, I think it was the iPhone 7 Plus on a gimbal, and I was taking some of the bride as B footage on the gimbal walking. Now, it was so hot that it overheated, it locked a little bit away through the shoot. So I lost some footage because of that, and that stopped me then from ever doing that again, because I would worry now about that's going to happen at a critical moment. So, yes, even though your iPhone can do 4K 60p, I think if you try and push that in a sunny situation where it gets really hot, that may happen again. So you really can't, you really have to be using more expensive sort of gear if you're going to be doing that type of work. Luckily, I had other cameras rolling in another spot, so I still got the footage. It was just an image where I was following the bride with this little gimbal. So even the iPhones can overheat. So it's something you've got to be careful of if they're in direct sun. What else have we got? Sony makes great cameras. They have not figured out how to make great cheap lenses. Probably photography is my hobby. I don't need my camera and lens to be more expensive than my car, so Canon for now. Don't forget though, you don't have to buy Sony lenses. You can buy all the other lenses that are out there. Remember, that's the beauty of this Sony mirrorless system, is that you can throw any lens on there. So you don't have to have that. The Sony cameras in particular, like the a7R2 and a7R3, and the A9 particularly, using Canon lenses will focus probably just as good as what your Canon bodies are. So don't be put off by Sony lenses being expensive. So that's something that you've got to think about. And I actually, to be honest, don't think the Sony lenses are that dear, to be honest, when you think of how good they actually are. So, you know, I have a think about that. But if it is an issue and you already have Canon lenses, you can shoot with Canon lenses for the time being. What else have we got? Mark said, what is the name of the site that tells you the value of your gear? I'll put it in the description down below, Mark, when we're finished. So I will put that in the description down below so you can have a look. Keith said the A7000 is the next camera, and I think you're right, Keith. I think that's what it's going to be. I'll be surprised if they make it an A6700. It might be a big step up, so I've got a feeling that you're probably going to be right, that it's going to be an A7000. And I'm hoping, like I said, for 4K 60p. Give it to a Sony, even if it's 5 minutes. Casper said Sony, Sony, Sony. Good to see you here, Casper. NTSC, yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's where I'm saying that the PlayMemories hack, that will stop you getting that warning that you're shooting in NTSC if you're in Australia or Europe. If you're in America and you want to get the PAL system, well, you're going to get that same warning. So having that hack on there stops that warning coming up every time you turn the camera on. That was driving me nuts, and it's something that I love, being able to take that out. Altric's here. G'day, Altric. Altric's just about to get his A9. Time-lapse will be missed. Yeah, I don't know why they've taken that out. Like, now you're going to have to buy an intervalometer. What a pain. I mean, it should be internal in the camera. That's why I was saying they need the PlayMemories app so you can at least get time-lapse. I use time-lapse all the time. Oh, Altric got his A9. Oh, well done. Congratulations, Altric. I'm so glad. You're going to love that camera. Best camera I've ever had. Seriously, that camera is the most amazing wedding and portrait camera I've ever had in my life. I adore it. Every time I pick it up, I just think, wow, even though it was 7,000 Australian, I don't regret it one bit. I absolutely love that camera. Best camera I've ever owned. So congratulations. Chad said my A9 feels so much better with my battery grip. And you know what, Chad, I actually have been using the battery grip quite a bit with my A9. I normally don't, but I've been using it and I've actually found it quite good. The last couple of shoots that I've done, I've used the battery grip and it actually is quite nice. It does feel nice when you go into portrait, obviously, and then you've got your controls right there. I Am What I Am said, hey, question out of topic. Have you ever used speed lights with Profoto like D1, D2? I don't know how to trigger them all in manual mode, and Profoto have no info regarding this. Yeah, look, it's not an issue. They just work in manual, obviously, but they work for me every time. That's what I've got in my studio. I've got D1s in the studio. I Am What I Am. That's what I'm using. I've just got the Nikon remote though. That's the one. But I used them the other day, and I used the Sony remote as well. And I used just the standard. I think it was the Nikon Air remote as well. I've got 3 Air remotes, and they all work without a problem. They just fire, so I don't understand why it's not working. The only thing that you may be not doing is your camera has to be on wireless mode if you're dealing with Sony. So yeah, that could be what it is. Are you talking about Sony? I Am What I Am with that? Yeah, so I think that's probably what you're talking. I know they won't fire if you're not in wireless mode, so that's important to be in wireless mode. Otherwise, they won't fire. But I've had no problem firing them at all. But what trigger are you using as well? What remote? Because like I said, I've only used the Sony remote and the Nikon remotes. I haven't used the Canon, but I know the Nikon and the Sony remotes work perfectly. First time in manual, no issue at all. Davey, Ted's at High Point want to know when you will place your order. How do you know? Do you work at Ted's or something, Dave? I know. Look, oh. I have got gas, guys. I'm not going to lie to you. I have got gas. It's hard not for me to buy the a7RII. I'm going to hold out, though, because I'm waiting to see what Sony release next. I definitely have gas, so I'd love to buy it. I'm envious of all you guys that have purchased it. I've asked Sony Australia to send me a evaluation copy of one, so whether they will or not, I'm not sure. Let me just check, because I thought I saw an email coming through before. Senior race memory card. Yeah, okay. They just notified me. No, they just notified me they're going to send me a replacement memory card. So it is the memory card that's the issue for that camera. So that's good news. I'll get my camera back shortly, I suppose. Yeah, so I've asked Sony Australia to see if they can send me an a7RII to review. So hopefully they will. I don't know. The problem here in Australia is it's hard to get those type of things. It's much easier for you guys in the US because you have places like B&H and Amazon and everyone else that will send you gear. It's a lot tougher in Australia to get review gear. You basically have to purchase it. So hopefully I will. Like I said, Profoto looked after me because they did ask me to review the A1 locally, so I'm hoping Sony will do the same thing for me. Michael said they also changed the battery readout. Yes, that's on the HD, is it? Yeah, that works with the Sonys now, which is great, because it didn't work before, which was annoying as hell. That's the HD monitor, the focus. That's great now that works. Michael said, David, how long did you take your business to start making a profit? I've been full. I'll explain how I actually started, guys, because when I first left school, I went into the advertising industry, and basically I worked for some high-end agencies here in Australia. I did that as an apprenticeship. I'm not sure if you have apprenticeships in America or in England. I think England does, but yeah, I did that as an apprenticeship where I also did photography and everything as well. in that as well. Then I left that after around about, I think I was there for around about 20 years doing that. There was all fashion work and advertising, things like that. I left there and I went to RMIT, which is one of Australia's largest universities. At RMIT, I actually, I was one of the original founders, well, starting up to teach Photoshop, because I started from the first version of Photoshop that was released. We worked very closely with Adobe. And I also worked very closely with Apple. I was an Apple Fellow, which means I looked after the whole of Apple for our university. So I also had that background too with Apple and also Adobe, which is what I work with. So I taught and lectured on Photoshop and also high-end color and also photography for a number of years at this university. I think I was there for around about 25 years. I left there and I started my business up. It took me... because I had that big grounding early on anyway, and I was always sort of shooting in fashion, I then decided to start going full-time, and it took me about 2 years to become what you call profitable, where I'd start to make reasonable money to the point where I am now, where I'm actually living reasonably well. So, you know, it did take a while, Michael. It took a few years, but I did have that very big grounding early on, coming from that sort of lecturing side and also from that high fashion side. That's why a lot of brides will book me, because they always notice that my images, the wedding images, do always have a fashion look about them, a high fashion-y type look, and that's because of that area that I came from. And that's why I'm particularly strong with retouching, because that used to be the area that I actually dealt with from the advertising industry where I came from. And it's also, like I said, my knowledge from Adobe as well, you know, it was a big thing as well. I was always involved with Adobe. I actually did some lecturing in trade shows and all that sort of stuff for Adobe early on as well. That was a fair while ago, but I did do that in the early years of Photoshop. So I've been heavily involved in Photoshop right from the start. So yes, it did take a good couple of years, Michael, though. So you have to support yourself before you do that. And whatever you do, and this is for other people that may not have a good financial background, do not go full-time with your business until you have at least 6 months or so of money to back you up, guys, because you do not want that type of stress to start hitting you. You need a good base foundation of money to tide you over when things are a little bit quiet at the beginning, and you don't want to have that stress worrying about stuff. And like I said in the other thing that we had recently, the other talk we had, do not go into finance to buy your gear. That's the main thing. Do not do that, because it'll destroy your love of photography, because you'll be worried about money all the time. So I hope that answers that question, Michael. Chad said, look at KH photos. I'm not sure what that was about, Chad. Michael said one A7R2 and one A7S2. Oh, okay, so you had the A7S2. Are you going to keep the A7S2, Michael, or have you sold both? Did you donate again, Michael? More beer, I love it. Oh, thank you, Michael. Thank you so much. So did you keep both of the? Did you keep the A7S2, Michael, or are you going to sell that too? See, the A7S will have the PlayMemories hack as well. A7S2. I'll be keeping it. What's that saying? Ariel, oh my God, I lost today. Lucky I can watch later. Greetings from Brazil. I have two FS7s. Ah, so you're fine for video. Yeah, well, you have, Michael. You're set if you've got two FS7s, so you don't have to worry about that at all. Dwight said his A7 is due to November. Yeah, so it looks like it is November for most people. I wonder why China is delivering that so early. Keith's obviously gone to bed. Ariel said, my concern with the Mark III models is not to have PlayMemories and not be able to install OpenMemories Tweak. Well, if you're really concerned, Ariel, you may want to say get the A6500 and then also get the A7R2 as well. Because obviously the A6500 will give you that ability to have that OpenMemories tweak. Or even the A6300 or even the A6000, you can put that in there. So if you are worried about not having any of those, you could buy those lower, cheaper models, or even get a second-hand camera as well that gives you that ability to have that. That's the reason why I'm saying I won't sell those cameras, because I do want to keep that PlayMemories tweak. And also I love to be able to do time lapses and stuff like that as well. To Take the Shooter said, I never use my time lapse, but Matt, it will be gone. That's the thing, you never miss it until it's gone. That's funny, I know, you do. That happens to me all the time. Altric said, been up all night customizing it. I know, I love the customizations of the A9. Michael said, tag 7200 GM or 100 to 400. I probably would get the 100 to 400 if that was me, but that's what I'd be buying, and I'd be running the 85 lens for portraits and stuff like that, and I'd run the 100 to 400 if I had the choice. That was me personally. That's what I'd be buying. What else? I'm DeBrown said, I don't think Sony will keep having so many models. I see them keeping the a7RII and no A9RS till 2019. You may be right there, Tony. I could think that could be a possibility. I do think they'll release an a7RII. I think they have to, and we discussed that yesterday. I think they have to have a camera that is in that lower price range, a full frame camera. So I think that's definitely going to be a camera that will be announced early in 2018. And clearly, I think they've also got to release an a6500 update. So that's going to happen. So yeah, I think it's just a matter of time before that actually happens. What else have we got? Diana said, Diana Brown said, yes, this is gas season. I can't wait to see what NAB brings in February. I know that might be when they release the A6000 perhaps. A6000 or 7000, I should say. Casper said 100 to 400 GM is the lens. And I reckon that's one I wouldn't mind to buy, the 100 to 400 GM. That does interest me, that lens. Take the Shooter said, I was glad I was able to get B&H Photo to add me a free fast Sony card. I know, how good is that? I think they've stopped that now, but that is a great thing. Take the Shooter said, well, why the hell did you stop your business videos? I know, I am going to get back to that. I promise I will get back to that. I just haven't had the time. Things have been absolutely nuts around here lately with all the editing and things that I've had to do. But I will definitely get back to those business videos when I can. I promise I will get back to that. Michael said, yes, David, we have apprenticeships. Okay, there you go. Yep. Ben Ashford said, are you still in contact with Adobe? I have a couple of ideas. No, I'm not Ben anymore. That was when I was working at RMIT. I don't have anything to do with them now at this stage. I was heavily involved with Adobe for a number of years though, like really involved. I was beta testing their software. I did lots of stuff for Adobe early on. I did that for a number of years, probably 15 to 20 years that I was like that. What else have we got? Oh yeah, keeping your A7S II. Yeah, good idea, Michael. I wouldn't get rid of it either. Ben said, I am what I am, put the speed lights in slave mode, and then the Profotos should trigger them. Yeah, you don't have to do that for the Profoto though, Ben. I think he's just using a normal... Is he saying he's using an on-camera flash? I'm not sure what he's talking about. Tag the Shooter, you need to confirm what are you using to trigger the actual Profoto units. Let me know and I'll answer you. Oh, hey, you're saying it here. I am what I am. I have Nikon, so to control my Camera 3 Profoto plus 2 speed light, I have to buy Nikon Remote SU4 or Profoto Air Remote. Yeah, okay, yeah. Yes, you need to get the Air Remote. Yep. I mean, you could actually put a speed light on, and they will fire if you put them, like Ben said, if they're on remote. They will fire from that. But honestly, the thing I would be probably doing is just buying an Air Remote controller and do it from that, because that works perfectly every time. And if you've got 3D ones, that's the way to go. Certainly the way I use them. So yeah, Tag the Shooter said, Michael, it depends on what you shoot more. I've got both 70 to 200 I use for portraits and low light weddings and events. Only use the 100 to 400 for sports in good light. 100 to 400 okay in low light though. Well, yeah, they are now, particularly with the high ISO, you can push things up. Like I said, I think I'd buy the 100 to 400 before I had the 70 to 200, but I have the F4 version of that, so... Mark said, are they saying the deliveries were in China because the volume of orders is greater there? Well, you could be. You might be right, Mark. I'm not sure. They're not saying. Downloader her said, what do you think about the Sony 100 2.8 STM as your main portrait lens? It's not fast enough. Look, they say 2.8, but I think it's equivalent of 5.6. Because of the, look, the bokeh on that lens is gorgeous. It is stunning. But remember, because of that technology that's designed in that lens, it's not actually a 2.8 lens. It's actually got the amount of light coming in, like I think it's around about a 5.6. So you have to be very careful with that lens if you wanted to use that in really low light scenarios. You could up the ISO, obviously. But to be totally honest, I think if you're going to deal in that, I'd be buying the 85 1.4 or the 85 1.8 Sony lens, or the Batis, which is what I've got. I'd be buying those lenses first before you'd use the 100 2.8. That's just me personally, though. Ben Ashford said, don't think so. You would have to adjust the flashes themselves. Probably can't control from the camera. You can't control them from the camera, but you can control them if they have the air remote. Martin said, do you think the Sigma will bring out a range of lenses for Sony, and will you get any if they do? No, I don't think so, Martin. I'm totally staying within Sony lenses. I do that for a reason, for how quiet the Sony lenses are and also for how fast they focus. Look, yes, they're perfect. Some of these lenses are amazing. They're incredibly sharp and everything, but I've just made a commitment that I'm only just going to stick with Sony lenses. Not only that, I then also get pro support on those lenses. And for me as a working professional, I want to know if I have an issue with something like that, I can send it off the next day and it'll get fixed. I don't want to have to work out going through shops trying to get them fixed, do all these sort of things. I'm rough with my gear. And I want to know if there's an issue that it's just going to get fixed. And like I've said to you, Sony Pro support is incredible here in Australia. And that's the reason why I like to use Sony for everything, because it just works and it'll be fixed by Sony Pro support if there's an issue. What else? Mark said A6500 was released in January 2017. Do you think they'll upgrade this soon? Yes, I think early next year. I think, Mark, possibly NAB could be the area that it'll be done. I think they have to answer that. Look from yesterday's video. They've got to answer that camera from Panasonic. They also have to answer the GH5, and the only camera really they can do that with fully, when I've thought about it, is a new A6500. So I think basically, yes, it has to come out. Michael said, yes, it is 5.6. Yeah, so it's too slow, that lens. It's too slow for what I want. Take the Shooter said, David O said, it's still fast in low light. I got over it with the G85 GM and have the Batis. Love 100 for portraits, even in low light. Okay, well, that's good. You're saying you like it in low light. I already have the A6300 and the A6500 and the A7S, and I'll keep the A6500, but I would like a Sony with 2 cards, yeah. Every event I'm worried about getting home. Well, I've only ever had 1 card go, and that was that new Sony card. That's the only card, and they're now saying they're going to send me one out. But if I didn't have a second card and I relied on those images, I would have been in trouble. So, yeah, I was protected because I had JPEG on the second card. I can understand that. I don't think you're going to get 2 cards in the A6500 series, though. I'll be surprised. I'm not sure they'll fit in that body. So let's wait and see what happens. But I don't think that you'd be able to do it in that body. Like I said, just keep your A6500, yeah. Downloader said, do you put filters on your G-Master lenses? No, I don't use any filters at all. I basically just don't like to put anything on that glass. I just like them as they are. Brad Harris said, I'm a non-pro but still have a crap load of Sony gear. I am of the opinion that Sony needs to raise the minimum level of the quality support even for non-pros. Yeah, I can understand, Brad, that if you don't have enough gear to get Sony Pro support, that it would be an issue. I'm lucky that I have got Sony Pro support, but you should try and get it anyway. I know people that have got Sony Pro support here that weren't having full-time businesses, but they're still in it. Even if you just have to register a business name. Register a business name and create a small website, then you'll probably get through if you have enough gear to justify it. Diana said, Canon has a lot of cameras to answer to at NAB. If they answer at all, they must be asleep. Are you saying they haven't got any? I don't think Canon are listening at all. Yes, they're going to bring out a mirrorless, but how long, seriously, does it take to bring out a mirrorless camera? Like, honestly, what are they waiting for? Nikon should have already brought one out as well. I mean, how long can people keep waiting for these cameras that they keep promising are going to come out? The other thing too is, by the time these cameras come out, you're then going to have an A7 IV or an A9 IV or whatever it will be, an A7 8000 or whatever it's going to be. So again, they're going to be way behind the ballpark before they've even started. So they should have done this 12 months ago, guys. I mean, Canon, I just don't understand them. I really do not understand them. Tag the Shooter said, David, too old and weak for GM lenses. He doesn't have any. That's true, I am. I'm too old. I don't have I only have the f4 versions of those lenses. So I've only got the 16 to 35 f4. I've got the 35 1.4. I've got the 85 Batis. I've got the 70 to 200 f4. I've got the 32 f 3.2, and I've also got the 55 1.8. So I haven't got any G Master lenses at all. I don't want to lug that weight around at all. I mostly shoot primes. That's the thing I did with that. I grabbed all of those lenses when I was on my Nikon cameras of having all the 2.8 lenses, and my back was destroyed. I don't want to do that anymore. 90% of my work now I can shoot with the 35 1.4 and the Batis 85, and I'll carry the 70 to 200 for things where I need compression. Streets of Vancouver said, what other artistic interests do you have outside of photography, David? Nothing in art. I'm just a geek in technology, Streets of Vancouver. I love technology. I love Apple. You know, I have everything Apple in my house. I was actually always into music. That's the, I suppose I should say that. For most of my junior years, I was always a member of bands. I was actually a lead singer and lead guitarist. So I do have that aspect of me as well that I had from the artistic side, was music. Yeah, because I was always in bands. I used to have the long curly hair. I should show you a photo one day. You'll all laugh. But yeah, I did. I used to play heavy metal type music. I was always into Deep Purple and Black Sabbath and all that sort of stuff. You know, I used to love the headbanging, things like that. So that's the artistic side that I had, was music. And I do write a lot of music, and I still write music. Well, I haven't for a while, but I still wrote music recently, and I'd love to start writing it again, actually. What else have we got? You have to have gear, but not a working Pro. I think he's talking about the Sony Pro support. Michael said, David, I'm starting to get some RGB lighting. Do you use them at all? No. The only you're talking about lighting, general lighting. What's RGB lighting, Michael? I'm not sure what that means. Let me know down below. I'm curious. I do use lighting, but I've got the Neo Rotor lights and the ice lights and some other lights. Is that what you're talking about? Delta Dave said, Canon is relying on their L glass to keep the people in the system. They are. If they didn't have their glass, they'd be in trouble. The same as Nikon would be in trouble as well. But Sony, they will catch up. Michael said, David can only handle the GM lens when he has a few beers. I'm not saying, look, honestly, if those lenses are incredible, and honestly, if you can lug them around, they're stunning. They are stunning. I mean, that's the thing. I just don't want to lug that weight around, and I'm happy with what I'm getting out of my lenses. But, you know, if you're younger and you don't mind lugging around a bit of heavier gears, the GM is the way to go. Ariel said, I intend to replace my A7S with the a7RII, but I need more than 30 minutes of record time. Yeah, and that's a problem. I don't know how you're going to get around that unless you use an external recorder. I am what I am. Oh, okay, as I've told this, this does not trigger a 910 flash or any other flash besides, yes, yeah, you need the air remote and it'll only fire the Profoto lights. But you can run it with optical slave, yes, from an on-camera flash, for instance. Altric said, I'm eyeing the Samyang 35 1.4. That's probably going to be a good lens. Like I said, my favourite is the Sony 35 1.4. Yes, Streets of Vancouver said, wow, a guitarist and vocalist. Yes, I was. Always, I was the lead singer and the lead guitarist, yeah. Rock and roll, love it. Michael said, I can see David as a rock and roller. Not now, you can't. I'll see if I can find one in the next live one. I'll put it up if I can find one, guys. You're going to have a laugh. You will laugh when you see me with the curly hair. All this fuzzy curly hair. Where is my A7 III, David? What do you think about the A7 III, A7 II, which will not be high res and will not be a video shooting gear, just in the middle, for who you think is right? Oh, you're saying the A7R III or the A7 II, you mean? Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, the A7 III will be basically, it will give you more of a photographic type camera. Probably won't have anywhere near the video options that, say, the A7R III has. Obviously, it'll have the less resolution around that 24 megapixel size. It'll have the faster focusing. So it'll just be an area like that. So if you want the ultimate, say, resolution, you obviously go to the A7R III, I think. If you want the ultimate in video, I think you'll also have to go to the A7R III. I think the A7 III will be held back a little bit. You may not even get dual cards on that. We'll have to wait and see, but it's going to be interesting to see what they offer in that camera. So we don't know yet. That's why I'd be waiting to see what you need. To be honest, if you're looking at the moment, the A7R III is a great camera if you're thinking about getting in at the entry level now for a terrific camera that will last you the next 3 years. Jim Penn said, off topic, do the Seekers still perform? Yeah, I think they do, Jim. I think they still do here. Occasionally, I think. I'm not sure whether they do. I know they came and occasionally they'll end up doing get-togethers again. They haven't done one for a while though, but they may as well. Give Judy a kiss for me. See, Ben, who I talked to here, is a drummer in a band as well. So, yeah, Ben's the heavy rocker drummer. Tag the Shooter Photography said, you have 2 Sony cameras to be pro support. Oh, okay. Yeah, you do. That's right. You have, haven't you? Full colour LED lighting, red, green, blue. No, I haven't. That's interesting. Yeah, no, I haven't. Mention in the comment box down below in the comments what you're thinking about getting, Michael, because I'd be curious to have a look at that later on. Take the Shooter said, I don't care about the weight of GM. I just hate they don't fit in my damn new cute bags. And backpacks. Yeah, I know. That's another one of the things. The other thing too is I travel a lot. Like I can actually do weddings all through Australia. Like I can go to Cairns, I go to Brisbane. There's places that I'll travel all over, and I have issues with the carry-on luggage. I never have issues anymore fitting under the 5 kilogram weight limit with the Sony mirrorless and the f4 lenses. So that's another great feature as well. So if I was running the 2.8 lenses, I probably would have issues, whereas I don't have issues running those lenses. So that's another thing for me as well. Streets of Vancouver said, yeah, I doubt that the A7 III will have dual card slots. Yeah, we have to wait and see that, whether they will. Any more last questions, guys? Because we've gone for over an hour. I need to crack another beer, I think. So is there any last questions before we finish for the day? Like I said, I've got a wedding I've got on Sunday, so hopefully I can show you some of the results I'm getting from that. And I have weddings then running full on. I will have other videos coming up over the weekend. I might even have one tomorrow come up showing the Sony A9 again with the Profoto A1 or one of the other shots I've done recently. So I will show some of that coming up, and I will get back, like I can't remember who it was, I think it was Tag the Shooter. I will get back to the Sony business, setting up your photography business, etc. As soon as I can get back onto that as well, because there's a lot that I do want to show you about software I use and things like that I will get back to going through that soon as well. So if you can too, guys, please give me a thumbs up. I'd love you to give me a thumbs up, just to pass the word around for this. Michael said, look up WUS lighting, also one go 360 full color lighting. Okay, I'll have to look at it, Michael, and see what they show. Yes, I will, Jim. I'll look at that when I finish these 2 cases of these. I'll be drinking these for a while. Streets of Vancouver, no regrets sticking with Sony. No, not at all. I love the Sony stuff. Like I said, I have now got GH5s as well, and they sort of play very nicely together, to be honest. But if I had to pull out my favourite, Sony's still way my favourite. It's just that at the moment, they don't have anything to compete with the Sony with the GH5 for video. I'd have to say at the moment, if you're dealing with video, the GH5 is probably the best camera out there, especially for its money, whereas the Sony is definitely better as a camera that will do stills and also video. If you're dealing with just stills solely, you just can't beat Sony. They're so far ahead of anyone else out there at the moment. So remember, there's never one perfect camera for anyone, and it might be that I always now stick with Sony and the Panasonic, so I'll just see how it goes over the coming months, I suppose. But yeah, that's just the way I've got it. No regrets going to Sony at all. Nope. I sold all my Nikon gear. Well, that's about it, guys. All right, well, we might call it a day. I better go and do some work, and I'll see you all again soon for the next video. Any questions, put them down below, and I will get back to you on those as well, because I love to have the discussion down in the questions below. Take the Shooter said, David, why don't you have... Well, it's lemon. I've got a lemon tree out the back. I'm growing a lime tree, but it's only just been put in, so I'm going to be probably a couple of years away from having limes, but it has got lemons in there. We mostly drink lemon here over in Australia with Coronas. More lemon than lime, but yeah, it just depends, I suppose, what you use, but most of the time it tends to be lemon here. Thanks, Terry. Thanks so much for saying it was very informative. And that's about it, guys. Thanks for watching, Diana. Have a great evening, guys. Enjoy your sleep and rest or whatever you're going to do. Crack a beer and have another one with me. And I'll see you all again soon for the next video. So, good day.